Today, we're diving deep into the lived experience of being autistic. We're going to push past all the stereotypes to try and understand an inner world that is so rich, so complex, and honestly, so often misunderstood. So let's get right into it.
Let's start with this quote from Gunilla Gerland. Just take a second and really think about that. Imagine a world where you don't automatically assume that another person knows what you know or has seen what you've seen. It's such a powerful way to start thinking about a fundamentally different way of experiencing the world, where even the idea of a shared self isn't a given. This really gives us a peek into the unique inner landscape we're about to explore.
So that really gets to the heart of what we're asking today. What is the inner world of autism really like? We're going to try and set aside all the preconceived notions and build an answer from the ground up, using first-hand accounts and some really fascinating research to see this experience from the inside out. All right, first up, we're going to focus on that subjective internal world. Because, true understanding doesn't come from just observing behaviors from the outside, right? It starts with empathy, with trying to get a sense of what it actually feels like on the inside. This quote from the amazing Temple Grandin is just a perfect illustration of this. It shows us that autistic cognition isn't a lesser way of thinking, it's just a different one. She doesn't process in words, she thinks in pictures. So for her, a really abstract idea like social interaction becomes something concrete, something fragile, a sliding glass door. It's not wrong, it's just a vivid and completely different way of making sense of the world.
And this idea goes even deeper. Researchers Uta Frith and Francesca Happe came up with this really interesting theory. They suggested that for some autistic people, the challenge isn't just figuring out other people's minds, but also their own. Think of it like this. For many of us, when we're sad, we think, I am feeling sad. But what if, instead, the experience was just the raw, direct feeling of sadness itself without that extra layer of self-commentary? It's not a lack of an inner life, not at all, but maybe a more direct, unfiltered relationship with it.
And that brings us to something absolutely critical to understanding the inner experience, the stress avalanche. This is a concept from researchers Smith and Sharp. Okay, picture this. There's a single loud noise. For an autistic person, that sound can create a spike of stress. But that stress then makes them even more sensitive to everything else. The tag scratching their neck, the lights humming overhead. Each new thing adds more stress, which ramps up sensitivity even more, and suddenly you're in this cascading, overwhelming feedback loop. Okay, so we've gotten a little glimpse of the inner world. But what happens when that inner world collides with the expectations of the outside world? That's what this section is all about, the powerful and often really damaging impact of how society sees and misunderstands autism. The thing is, for most people who aren't autistic, where do they learn about it? The media, right? TV shows, movies. And as research shows, that's often a huge problem. These portrayals frequently lean on these tired, harmful stereotypes, turning autistic people into one-dimensional characters, the awkward genius, the childlike innocent, or just the butt of a joke. And that absolutely shapes how the public thinks. And sometimes, this narrative goes way beyond stereotypes and becomes actively harmful. There was this infamous ad campaign from Autism Speaks that literally personified autism as a villain. It was this menacing voice that promised to ruin families and destroy lives. This kind of rhetoric frames autism not as a core part of a person's identity, but as some kind of hostile enemy that needs to be defeated. There's actually a term for the kind of deep harm this stigma causes, psycho-emotional disablement. And it's more than just dealing with barriers in the world, it's about what happens when you internalize all those negative messages. It gets inside you, and it starts to attack your core sense of self, affecting not just what you're able to do, but who you feel you're even allowed to be. And the results of all this, they are very real and they are painful. This constant weight leads to things like chronic anxiety, social isolation, and huge barriers to getting a job. And it also leads to the need to mask, which is the constant, exhausting work of hiding your natural self just to fit in and feel safe. It's like putting on a performance every single day, and it is draining. So all of this really leads to this huge clash, this fundamental conflict right at the heart of how we talk about autism. It's a battle between two completely opposite ways of looking at the world, one that sees autism as a problem that needs to be fixed, and another that sees it as a human difference to be understood and accepted. Let's just break this down. On one side, you have the normalization agenda. This views autism as a disorder, a deficit. The whole goal is to change behavior, and success is basically measured by how normal a person can appear to be. But on the other side, you've got the neurodiversity paradigm. This sees autism as a natural variation in the human brain. The goal here isn't to change the person, but to change the environment to be more accepting. Success isn't about seeming normal, it's about well-being and having the freedom to be your authentic self.
Now, as you can imagine, that normalization agenda can have some really toxic consequences. One of the most troubling is what some have called Aspie's supremacy. This is an ideology that internalizes all that pressure to be normal and then creates a hierarchy. It suggests that some autistic people are better than others, usually based on how well they can perform in a neurotypical world. It's a really harmful idea that divides the community by tying a person's worth to how functional they seem.
So after all of that, where do we go from here? Is there a better way? Well, yes, there is. In our final section, we're going to look at some new ways of thinking that offer a much more hopeful, respectful path forward. A really powerful concept that's leading the way is called cultural compatibility. It's a mashup of two ideas: cultural competence, learning the facts about a culture, and cultural humility, which is all about self-reflection and being willing to listen and learn. This approach completely reframes autism. It stops treating it like a medical disorder to be managed and starts seeing it as a culture and an identity to be understood and respected.
So what does that actually look like in the real world? Well, it starts with awareness, recognizing your own biases. Then it takes knowledge, and crucially, seeking that knowledge directly from autistic people. From there, you build the skill to interact respectfully, and you seek out genuine encounters with the community. But honestly, none of that matters without the last step: a genuine desire to be a true ally. And that leaves us with this final, really important question. It's one thing to be aware of all this, but the real work, the real challenge, is to actively build a world that doesn't just tolerate difference, but actually values every single kind of mind. What does that world look like? And what's our part in making it happen? That's the thought I'd like to leave you with today. Thanks for digging into this with me.